الشعائر هي مرصوصة يعني ما فيش فيها شعائر يعني زي ما انت شايف في ردم ودمار وموت وتشريد البيت راح والولد راح وكل شيء راح ما طلعش فيها شعائر.
هذا أسوأ عيد بمر على أبناء الشعب الفلسطيني من كافة، لا أكل لا طحين لا مأوى لا مساجد لا بيوت لا فرشات لا أكل لا هذه الأمور صعبة جدا جدا جدا.
الأضاحي ما فيش منها لأن في عندك حج ما فيش منه، ما راح أكثر الناس ما راح تسعى الحج يعني في نقص عندك في خلل كيف بس بدك تصبر رغم لأنه الأمور غصب عنك مش بيدك أنت لأنه في إنتاج.
Get this straight, everybody. The people running Israel are not Semites. Let's just start with that. They're Ashkenazi Jews from northeastern parts beyond Turkey back in the day. Semites are people from the Mesopotamia region, like the Palestinians. Like the ones the Israelis are slaughtering. That's right. They're the Semites.
600 days. 600 days of starving 2 million. 600 days of American bombs worth billions. 600 days of unchecked violence. 600 days of complete Arab silence. 600 days of wiping out entire bloodlines. 600 days of dishonest headlines. 600 days of shooting children in the head. 600 days of bombing refugees in their tents. 600 days of atrocity propaganda and lies. 600 days of mothers' screams and their cries. 600 days of people buried under rubble, forever lost. 600 days of total genocide and holocaust.
Panic, chaos. A young girl tries desperately to shake her brother back to life. An Israeli drone has just struck a busy street in Gaza City. Israel insists it only targets Hamas, but so many it kills are civilians. When grief is so raw, how do you put it in words? May God take revenge on you, this woman screams. Her child, one of more than 54,000 victims of Israel's assault. Death is constant in Gaza, but that doesn't make it any easier to bear. For everyone here, Israel is guilty of genocide. But some direct their anger at Hamas too. May God punish you, this distraught man says of one Hamas leader. I pray you are killed too. Back at the scene of the attack, a man is collecting pieces of human flesh in a plastic bag. All he can do to give the victims a dignified burial. This part of Gaza City is crammed with families who've been forced to flee from elsewhere. Since breaking the ceasefire in March, the Israeli military has displaced more than 600,000 Palestinians. UN data shows that 82% of the Gaza Strip is now a declared militarized zone or under evacuation orders. The entire population is somehow meant to live in less than a fifth of the territory that's supposedly safer. Israeli officials have suggested their aim now is to push Gazans towards the south, where 3 of the new Israeli-backed aid distribution sites have been built. This afternoon, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation resumed operations after multiple instances of desperate Palestinians being shot trying to reach their site. Today's distribution passed off peacefully, but the scheme has been widely criticized by the UN, major charities, and those forced to scrabble for something, anything to feed their families.
We almost died in there. We almost died. All this to get some food for our children. This is all I could get. A bit of flour, a bit of lentils, and 2 packs of pasta.
Working alongside Israeli forces under this new aid distribution scheme, a new armed militia led by an alleged former Gazan criminal, Yasser Abu Shab. SOAB has previously been accused of running a looting gang from inside Israeli military-controlled territory. Now his men are openly working with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He denies wrongdoing and insists he's helping his people. Today, after a political rival accused the Israeli Prime Minister of arming Abu Shabaab, Benjamin Netanyahu released this video admitting to supporting clans in Gaza to rival Hamas. All the time, Israel's bombing campaign continues. Targeted this morning, a group of journalists in a hospital courtyard. Their colleagues reporting on their deaths as they mourn. The Israeli army said it had killed a member of the militant group Islamic Jihad. But the three victims were all known to have worked in the media prior to the war. Yet more families torn apart by suffering, which shows no sign of ending.
Well, joining me now, the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. And first of all, your reaction to this revelation that Benjamin Netanyahu has been supporting a rival militia to Hamas, jihadist, Israel-hating, and potentially arming them.
I don't know what to say. In as long as this militia is helpful in distributing the needs of the population in an effective way in cooperation with the Israelis, maybe this is a positive step, but I'm not familiar with the facts to be able to judge it from a distance. Again, I think that it is incumbent upon Israel to make sure that all the humanitarian needs of the population are provided in an effective manner. This is very important. This is our moral obligation. How to do it, it's not simple. And as you can see, I mean, in this chaos which is part of Gaza today, and as long as the military operations continue, it's probably very complex and very difficult. So if this militia is helpful in providing the needs, and actually effectively providing the needs, then maybe this is one way of coping with this difficulty.
Now, you have argued that Benjamin Netanyahu should now face war crimes charges. Can you explain why?
Well, I'm using a terminology that I didn't use, but yes, what I said, and I keep on saying, is that when a war is declared by a majority of Israelis, it's not a result of any national security interest of the state of Israel. When it is obvious and is accepted widely that there is not a chance that as a result of these operations, we will be able to save the lives of the hostages. Perhaps on the contrary, we may risk them and we may lose them. If in this process of a war which is not waged because of national interest, but as people say, because of the political interest of the Prime Minister, we're losing soldiers, we may lose the hostages, and quite a few Palestinians not involved are killed, this is a crime. And now I don't know whether it falls within the legal definitions of the war crime, whatever, but it doesn't matter. It has to stop right now. We have to end the war. We have to return all the hostages, and we have to make the necessary arrangements together with Egypt and Jordan and America and the Emirates and others in order to establish a new government in Gaza that will take over from Hamas. This is what we need to do instead of continuing an unnecessary war.
Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have both said they are considering further sanctions against members of the Israeli government. Would you support that?
Well, you don't want me to give a bill of health in advance on something that I'm not familiar with. I can say this. If Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, these two outspoken extremist, messianic, fundamentalist supporters of terror, ministers, senior cabinet ministers in the Israeli government will continue to be representatives of the spirit of this government, that I will not be surprised if friendly countries, and I consider President Macron to be a friend of the state of Israel. I know him, I know what he thinks, I know that he is committed to the best interest of the state of Israel, not of the government of Israel. But if he will decide to take measures against specific individuals because of what they say and what they do, I will not be surprised.
Ehud Olmert, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, earlier today, the Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Oren Marmerstein, offered an interview. It was on the basis that our agreed duration of 4 minutes couldn't be edited. More people have been killed today in Israeli airspace. The British Prime Minister has described what's going on in Gaza as appalling and intolerable and is considering further sanctions. The French are also considering sanctions. What's your response?
Hi, Christian. It's good to be on the show. First, I want to share with you some of the sentiment in Israel. It's a very emotional day in Israel. 2 of our hostages are back. They are back in a military operation. They are dead. This is Gadi and Judy, 73 years old and 70-year-old. Those are two people, grandpa and grandmother, went for a morning walk and they were slaughtered.
And I will ask you about this, but I'd be grateful if you answer the question.
I will answer. I just want to share with you something that I heard before coming to this show. This is the last phone call of Judy, crying, calling the emergency line, saying, my husband is just been shot. I've been shot. My husband's brain is spilled over. Come and help me. Unfortunately, no one helped her. She was slaughtered. Gadi was slaughtered. And 56 more hostages are still in the hell nightmare called Hamas. We want to see them back. And every day that passes by just makes it more urgent to have our hostages released.
Yes, but your response to the international condemnation of what you're doing is what?
We're trying to share the situation as is with the international community and international organization. And the situation is the following. Unfortunately, Hamas is still a threat, an immediate threat to the people of Israel. We are not in a situation in which we cannot vouch that we won't have another October 7th. And this is why this war is still going on.
So you carry on. I mean, the former Defense Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, has said that Israel has been supplying weapons to a jihadist rival militia operating in Gaza under areas of Israeli control. How is that happening?
So first, I think the one making those statements needs to be asked.
But it hasn't been denied by the Prime Minister's office.
I think what the Prime Minister's office published is that Israel is doing everything possible to fight Hamas.
Including arming other militia.
I don't think they had it in their statement. So I think this is the wording.
You're not denying it, are you?
No, I'm saying that we are doing everything possible to fight this evil. What kind of person killed a 70-year-old grandma in her morning walk? What kind of person takes Ariel and Kfir Bibas, 2 babies, and kidnapping? If you can explain this to me, what kind of cause justify taking babies as hostages, I would be astonished.
And is the lesson of what has happened in bringing back these 2 bodies that armed conflict is the way to get the hostages back? Because many of the hostage families fear that more of those who are still alive will be killed if this war carries on.
I think first we should listen and respect the hostages' families, I would say almost in a sacred way. They are going through living hell. I can't imagine having my daughter, my mother in captivity in Hamas.
But the war carries on because we're very tight for time.
I can't imagine. So we should listen to them. But on the same time, we should also judge what proved to be very effective. It's the combination of military operation and diplomatic means. And if you allow me, I can explain about the diplomatic means.
I'm afraid our time is up. So Oren Marmerstein, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The biblical rights, which have absolutely no status, none. Nobody in the world can say, 2,000 years ago, here's my story of what happened, so therefore I have a right to do it now. You can't live in a world like that. Nobody in the world ever makes such a claim. You want to make it? Okay, but then just admit I'm out of the world, distinct from the world. Now, yes, totally distinct. If you really want to play that game, the Palestinians have more of a right to claim to be descendants of the population from 2,000 years ago than I do. My ancestors probably come from the Caucasus. Their ancestors come from Palestine. The Canaanim were correct about this. So you don't want to get into that game. Biblical rights have no status.
Deep, dark son of a sorry to tell you. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually.
If you take out Saddam, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Netanyahu had, from 1995 onward, the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way.
Palantir has blood on his hands for killing kids in Gaza. Over 50,000 people have been killed in Gaza because of this AI technology. This is not innovation. Genocide is not innovation. National security is healthcare, housing, it's a climate crisis. We need your innovation for the people and the planet's needs. Stop killing creatures. Stop surveilling leaders. Stop Palantir. We're at the AI conference being kicked out for calling out all these corporations for making a killing off of killing. Palantir is speaking here. They're responsible for targeting and bombing kids, aid workers, people in Palestine. All of these people here, they're talking about innovation for genocide. We need to be combating the climate crisis. The defense contractors, the Pentagon, the big tech, they are all in here with a showroom. They are literally using drone warfare competition, and they're proud of it. They are proud to make a killing off of killing.
We as leftist Jews know that we have a moral obligation to distinguish ourselves from Zionism. Israel has made their objective clear. Colonize Palestine regardless of the human or moral cost. Well, we are here to re-emphasize that while Israel and the United States may declare that Palestinian suffering is essential to Jewish safety, we say no, absolutely not. It is clear that mainstream American Jewish organizations like AIPAC and the ADL have placed support for Israel's actions over the actual safety of American Jews. Shame! It is very clear to us that locking up activists whose simple desire is for humanity in Gaza in the name of Jewish safety endangers Jews. Shame!
Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
At the United Nations, the United States vetoed another Security Council resolution calling for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The final vote was 14-1. This is Dorothy Shea, acting U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations.
The United States has taken the very clear position since this conflict began that Israel has a right to defend itself, which includes defeating Hamas and ensuring they are never again in a position to threaten Israel. In this regard, any product that undermines our close ally Israel's security is a non-starter. This resolution would undermine diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire that reflects the realities on the ground and emboldens Hamas.
Meanwhile, Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour criticized the U.S. vote. This was his response.
One would have hoped that these minimal demands that are dictated by humanity, by legality, by morality, would have received unanimous support. But unfortunately, they were faced with a veto.
The U.S. veto comes as a group of veterans and their allies have entered their third week of a fast for Gaza outside the UN. This is Lieutenant Joy Metzler, an active-duty second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force, who's applied for conscientious objector status.
The blatant violation of international law, that the U.S. and breaking its own laws. And I joined the military because I wanted to uphold justice. I wanted to protect our country. I wanted to protect people. And really, what the genocide in Gaza opened my eyes to is that the U.S. military and the U.S. government are just not interested at all in either of those things. And so all of that came together, and I said, I can't be in the military anymore. This isn't what I had been brought up to believe it is. The U.S. has been a destabilizing force for years now, and so I'm doing exactly what I had been taught to do, which is stand up for justice. But now I see that standing up for justice means being on this side with all these people out here in this fast who are really fighting, actually fighting for people in the Middle East and in Gaza to be able to lead lives with dignity.
Joy Metzler was approved for conscientious objector status in April.
And this is one of the Fast for Gaza organizers, Mike Ferner. He's the former president of Veterans for Peace.
I was a Navy corpsman during the American War in Vietnam, where we killed over 2 million people. I worked in a Navy hospital and tried to put together the bits of humanity that came back from Vietnam. So I've seen what happens to people in war, and it has never left me. It can't leave me. And so Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, these things happen, and it just tears me up. And not just me, but many people all over the world, particularly Veterans for Peace members who have seen what war does. And you can't get that out of your mind. And when you see the hourly feeds from Palestine that we've been getting, you can't take it. I mean, I can understand completely why Aaron Bushnell did what he did. Not many of us have that much courage, but we want to do as much as we can to stop this. So that's why we're doing this fast.
For more, we're joined in our New York studio by another hunger striker, Kathy Kelly's board president of World Beyond War, longtime peace activist, pacifist author, who's been arrested more than 60 times, has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize a number of times. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Kelly. Kathy Kelly, how are you feeling? You're in the third week of your hunger fast. Talk about why you're usually outside the UN hunger striking.
Well, thank you, Amy. And I mean, yes, third week, but we wake up each morning and we don't worry about whether or not our children have been buried under rubble overnight. We're not drinking poisoned water. We're not surrounded by rubble. We're not dealing with the horrible traumas that people in Palestine and Gaza are dealing with. And so we want to take what action we can to encourage, to focus world attention, because the leaders of the world now have an opportunity. It's really an unusual opportunity to press forward beyond yesterday's very, very unfortunate vote, the 5th time the United States has vetoed a Security Council resolution. There is a mechanism called Uniting for Peace, which would allow the General Assembly to bypass a U.S. veto. And the member staffs of the United Nations General Assembly permanent missions understand this mechanism. They really are working hard, but if we all push, as has been happening, we really do see it, don't we, all around the world. I mean, in Ireland, Trinity College, they just severed, because of the student pressure, trade relations with companies and universities in Israel. But what the member states of the United Nations could do now is enact this Uniting for Peace resolution and not just make denunciations, but give it teeth, really implement what has been implemented in the past. I mean, in 1956, the United States worked with the Soviet Union to implement this resolution because they didn't want France and the UK to invade the Suez Canal area. They wanted to have control. So it is doable. The other thing is that the nations of the world ought to recognize that Israel is flaunting international law in so many ways. I mean, possession of nuclear weapons flaunts international law, and Israel has at least 90 thermonuclear weapons stockpiled. And the European Union is now investigating the other horrendous violations of human rights that have been happening. And upcoming is the plan for a two-state solution conference hosted by France and Saudi Arabia. France hasn't even recognized the statehood of Palestine yet. And we're familiar with Saudi Arabia as a predator nation, as one that has been pretty greedy and avaricious in the way that it has taken from the Yemenis and imposed drastic warfare. So what is going to happen? Is it possible that they're going to try to use the United Nations to sort of give a good cover to what might become a collection of Bantustan-like states that would not recognize the Palestinian right to self-return, Palestinian right to self-determination, Palestinian right to survival at this point?
Well, Kathy, of course, as you mentioned, the U.S. vetoed this resolution. They've done so multiple times. What are you calling for now? How long do you intend to continue your hunger strike?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we're out there for 40 days, so we're just really at the beginning part. We want that Uniting for Peace resolution to be invoked, and it is a mechanism that's possible. We also think that there are plenty of ways that they could give more teeth through using economic trade measures being canceled. The European Union is investigating that, but they can move faster and more firmly so that we give teeth to the denunciations that have been given. And of course, there's much more alliance. The United States is quite isolated. And perhaps within Israel, Israeli people longing for the release of the hostages will start to listen to some of their own reservists who are saying, no, Prime Minister Netanyahu is sabotaging the hostage release and ceasefire possibilities, and they won't go to Gaza. There are 20 waiting to be sentenced, most likely.
How many of you are fasting, and what would lead you to end your fast?
750 worldwide. We're on the corner of 1st Avenue and 45th Street. And right now we are usually about 12 people that are core fasters here in New York. But there are others in Australia. We're hearing from people in China, Ireland, Canada, Mexico. So this is a fast that grew very, very quickly. Phil Tottenham, as Mike said, concerned about the life-risking options. He didn't want to do what Aaron Bushnell did because he said, well, I was afraid to do that, but he said, I can fast. And so that's really what got this going. What would make us stop? Well, certainly if there were a permanent, unconditional, immediate ceasefire and all distribution of aid was being facilitated by the United Nations, which knows how to do it, and the Gaza Human Foundation would not be any longer relied on. They're luring people into food distribution centers and then shooting them in the head, in the torso. And so we want to see the full distribution of food and a complete end to any United States weapon shipments to Israel.
Kathy Kelly, we wish you the very best. Kathy Kelly is board president of World Beyond War, has just entered her 3rd week on a hunger strike. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.
3 tech giants are fueling genocide in Gaza. Here's how.
Israeli war crimes are powered by Azure.
What is Azure? Microsoft Azure has long been the cloud provider for Israel's defense ministry, and since 2023, their cloud usage has spiked by 155%.
The Israeli military uses technology to select bombing targets in Gaza and Lebanon.
But discovered her work was being used to help the Israeli military record and translate Palestinian voices on the ground in Gaza.
In 2021, Google and Amazon signed on to Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion deal with Israel.
Also includes advanced image recognition software.
The servers store information on millions of Palestinians in Gaza, which has been used to choose targets for aerial strikes.
We know that these AI systems have a number of false positives associated with them.
and I refuse to build technology that powers genocide, apartheid.
Israel is increasingly using AI in its war on Gaza, including systems like Project Lavender, which creates kill lists, and Where's Daddy, which tracks targets and signals when they return home to make bombing easier. Most sickening of all is that these tech giants aren't reluctantly involved. They're competing to sell to Israel, because Israel isn't just a client, it's a live demonstration.
Israel doesn't care about statements. The Israeli government is saying out loud, we're going to corral Palestinians in Gaza basically into a concentration camp in a little bit of the strip, and we're going to take over the rest. And is starving and slaughtering people on a daily basis. It does not care that Canada, France, and the UK says, well, if you carry on doing this, we're going to do something terrible. We need to be actually taking action now, today. Action that Israel will be forced, compelled to listen to and stop. Everything else is meaningless and is allowing this to continue.
Free Palestine is just today's version of Hitler.
Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine. And if you want to say that I'm saying, say it to my face, BB, and you won't walk away from that confrontation. Free Palestine is the most honorable expression of humanity that exists in the world today. What it means is that the Palestinian people have an inherent right to enjoy the dignity and freedom and sovereignty as every other human being on this planet, free of the occupation of Israel, free of the genocide of Israel, free from seeing their children burned to death in front of them. That is what Free Palestine stands for, and I will shout it out as loud as I can, whenever I can, forever, until there is a Free Palestine.
That is actually what genocide is. When you want to kill as many Jews as you can kill.
That's the problem, Piers.
Yeah, but that is genocide.
No, that is the problem. You always say that they want to kill the Jews.
They do.
That is dangerous. You and I know that.
But they do.
Our problem is not against
They don't make
the Jews.
They don't make it secure.
No. Our problem is not with the Jews. And even Hamas' problem is not with the Jews. It is with the Israelis.
Well, then why do they kill so many Jews then?
They did not kill Jews. They killed Israelis. And I don't justify killing of Israel. It's not that I want them to kill Israelis.
What
But there's a
religion do you
huge
suspect
difference.
most of the Israelis were?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
No, it makes a huge difference. They were not attacked because they were Jews. They were attacked because they were Israelis. It's a huge difference.
Well, how many of the people who were killed were not Jewish?
It doesn't matter. But would you like?
Of course it matters.
No, it matters. Let me ask you a question. So many Palestinians were killed. Thousands of Palestinians were killed. Would you call Israel killed the Muslims in Gaza? You would say the Palestinians. And the Israelis were Israelis. They were not there as Jews. They were there as Israelis. And that is dangerous, Piers. It's not a religious war. This is a war between colonization and colonized, occupiers and occupied. People who have been living under blockade, under siege, under occupation for the past 77 years. It's not with the Jews. We never had a problem with the Jews. We love the Jews as much as we love the Christians.
But you have a problem with Israelis?
Of course, we have a problem with the Israelis as occupiers.
How can you say you have no problem with the Jews, but you have a problem with the Israelis, given that most Israelis are Jewish?
I'm just astonished that you can't make the difference between the Jews and the Israelis, please.
And you say it's because they're Israelis, not Jewish?
Because they're occupiers, because they occupied our country.
And they're Jewish?
No, just because they occupied our country, because they're colonizers. Because they came to our country, kicked us out in 1948, and they killed thousands of Palestinians, including my grandparents.
You know why Israel was set up. It was set up after World War II, in which Jewish people were the victims of an appalling Holocaust by Hitler and the Nazis, where 6 million of them were exterminated purely because of their ethnicity and being Jewish.
That's correct.
So the Jewish people were given the state of Israel.
My country.
Okay, I understand that. Listen, I understand that argument. I understand the whole history, the whole argument. But it wasn't Israelis given that place, it was the Jewish people.
Yeah, but who are you to give the Jewish people my country?
I'm not giving it to them.
I'm not talking about you personally. Yeah. I'm talking about those who send the Zionists to come and kill our families and take our lands. We have a problem with the occupiers, Piers. We don't have a problem with the Jews.
Why the ICJP was focused on Palestine is really simple. I started my journey at 16 years old in World War II. Right? Palestine, the violations of international law came out as a parallel to the legal infrastructure that we built to protect people from violations that happened in World War II, but continued from that day onwards. It's like two separate rays coming out from the same place. And it's, for me, it's the longest single human rights violation that's happened systematically with impunity in human history since the 40s, if not before that. And for me, solving that problem or working towards solving that problem will mean, if we manage to do it, which I'm pretty confident at some point we will as humanity, it will solve a lot of other problems. It will be a really important lesson. It will be the final lesson to learn after World War II. And where we are right now is that in order to not learn that lesson about Palestine, the rest of the world, the Western world, the powerful part of the Western world, is prepared to destroy the infrastructure that came from World War II. On the backs of 75 million people that died, they're prepared to destroy that infrastructure. And I don't want to be part of that process that helps to dismantle that important development from after World War II. I mean, that would be abhorrent to 6 million Jews, 11 million people in total in the concentration camp, and also 75 million people that I think died for no reason at all.
Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. As Gaza faces more than 3 months of a near-total Israeli blockade, activists are heading there now on a ship to deliver humanitarian aid. The boat is called the Madeleine, named after Gaza's first fisherwoman who ran her father's fishing business after he was injured in a 2009 Israeli attack. The Freedom Flotilla Coalition initially planned to sail from Malta last month, but their ship was damaged after it was bombed by drones in international waters. At Sunday's launch of the Madeleine from the Italian port of Catania, actor Liam Cunningham, known for his role in the series Game of Thrones, spoke out in support of the effort.
My name is Liam, I'm from Ireland. The reason I'm here, as far as I'm concerned, the heart and soul of humanity is in Gaza. For me, this attack, this genocide, is not just on Palestinians, it is on the whole human race. These wonderful, brave people who are setting off on this boat are heroes. And also the people of Gaza, for the last 600 days, are heroes. They are, in my mind, they will always be heroes.
A group of 12 activists are carrying the aid for Gaza, including the Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, who will join us from the Madeleine ship in a minute. She spoke Sunday at the launch.
A month after our latest attempt to go on with this mission, the boat was bombed twice. All evidence suggests Israel. And we are doing this because we have to keep our promise to the Palestinians to do everything in our power to protest against the genocide and to try to open up a humanitarian corridor.
Since setting sail, passengers on the flotilla have faced many threats, including from U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who wrote on X, quote, "Hope Greta and her friends can swim," unquote. The Gaza Freedom Flotilla has also been shadowed by at least one military helicopter and have reported drones circulating the ship. This is Thiago Avila.
Hello, everyone. This is a new alert. We can clearly see a drone right now to our left. It's gaining on us a little bit. Please share this alert. Second alert of the night. The third day of our journey to Gaza to break the siege and create a people's humanitarian corridor on board the Madeleine. Please share our location. We'll be sending the exact coordinates.
In 2010, Israel conducted a deadly raid on another Gaza-bound aid ship, the Mavi Marmara. Israeli commandos stormed the boat in international waters, killing 9 people. A 10th died after 4 years in a coma. For more, we're joined from the international waters by Greta Thunberg, the internationally renowned Swedish climate activist known for inspiring the global youth climate strike. In 2019, she received the Right Livelihood Award. She's also been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Greta is speaking to us aboard the Gaza Freedom Flotilla's vessel Madeleine, which is on this voyage from Sicily to Gaza, again carrying life-saving aid in an attempt to break Israel's siege of the Gaza Strip. Greta, it's really something to see you on that ship right now. Can you tell us why you're taking this journey, extremely dangerous, and how you're planning to challenge the Israeli blockade?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, as you said, we are doing this mission following 1 month after our last attempt. Both Conscience was bombed and disabled. So that's why we are trying again, because we cannot afford to give up. There is simply too much at stake. And in times of injustice, as we are seeing now, the genocide and blockade happening, we have to do everything we can to demand an end to these atrocities and war crimes committed by Israel. And for me personally, I happen to have a platform for some reason, and then it is my moral obligation to use that platform. And if my presence on this boat can make a difference, if that can show in any way that the world has not forgotten about Palestine, and to try once again to attempt to break the siege and open up the humanitarian corridor and deliver the extremely needed humanitarian aid, then that is a risk I'm willing to take, and it's something that we just simply have to do. We cannot just sit around and do nothing and watch this live stream genocide unfold in front of our very eyes. So we are doing this because we are human beings who care about justice. And when our complicit governments fail to step up, it falls on us, unfortunately, to do so.
And Greta, could you talk about how you see the issue of Palestinian freedom connecting to or intersecting with the issue that you're best known for, which is climate change activism?
Yeah. For me, there's no way of distinguishing the two. We cannot have climate justice without social justice. The reason why I am a climate activist is not because I want to protect trees. I'm a climate activist because I care about human and planetary well-being, and those are extremely interlinked. For example, when we see the genocide in Gaza, of course, there are some very obvious links that ecocide, environmental destruction, is a very common method used in war and to oppress people. But also, it should be much simpler than that. No matter what the cause of the suffering is, whether that is CO2, whether that is bombs, whether that is state repression or other forms of violence, we have to stand up against that source of suffering. And if we pretend to care about the environment, if we pretend to care about the climate and our children's future without seeing and acknowledging and fighting against the suffering of all marginalized people today, then that is an extremely racist approach to justice that excludes the majority of the world's population.
And how? What is the mood aboard the ship? You have participants from Brazil, France, Germany, Spain, and you yourself are Swedish. What's the mood there?
The mood on board the ship is, I would say, that our spirits are very high and we are very determined to continue. So far, we have won over one of the major predicted obstacles, which is to be stuck in port due to the bureaucratic warfare that has been very strong, especially in the past. And the fact that we have gotten over that and that we are outsailing now and that we have gotten quite a far bit is already a victory in itself. Of course, this mission includes many risks, and we have done many risk assessments. But of course, we deem the risk of silence and the risk of inaction to be so much more deadly than this mission, of course. And we are 12 peaceful volunteers who are not carrying weapons. We are carrying food, medical supplies, and sanitary products and other very needed humanitarian aid into Gaza following the blockade. We will meet whatever is thrown at us with non-violence in any scenario. So we are trying to prepare and to maximize our safety and the success of this mission as much as we can.
Greta, as you attempt to bring in baby formula, medical kits, flour, prosthetics for kids with amputations, the Israeli military has threatened to block the Freedom Flotilla. The Israeli army says it's prepared to raid your ship. We know what happened to the Mavi Marmara with the Israeli raid and the killing of 9 activists on board. Ultimately, a 10th died. So are you seeing drones? How are you prepared to deal?
Yeah, we are seeing drones. Last night, there were 2 different moments where there were drones circulating above us. And we have safety procedures that we will use, and we have different scenarios that we are prepared for to try to maximize our safety in a non-violent way. So we are trying to do our very best, and it shows quite a bit that peaceful volunteers who are carrying humanitarian aid and necessary for survival is being threatened to be raided, intercepted, or attacked. I think that says quite a lot about the priorities and approaches of Israel right now. But we must also remember that this mission is not about us. It is not about the voyage or the people on board. This mission is about Palestine. It is about the genocide, the occupation, ethnic cleansing, and the other methods of war and oppression that are being used by Israel against the Palestinians. And we do not only need humanitarian aid to be let into Gaza, we do not only need a ceasefire, we need an end to the occupation.
How do you plan to break the military blockade around Gaza?
Sorry, what did you say?
How do you plan to break the military blockade around Gaza?
We are planning to continue sailing until we cannot sail anymore. It is very difficult to predict what scenario it will be, but as far as we know, we are planning to continue as we are now.
And what is your message to folks around the world, especially to young people who throughout the advanced countries seem to have much more interest and dedication to ending the war in Gaza?
My message is that right now international law is failing us. International institutions, our governments are failing us. Media, our companies are all failing us. Or failing us is a diplomatic way of saying that our system seems to be designed in a way that is built upon exploitation and oppression of people. And so there's no one to turn to. There's no one we can turn to rescue the situation. But it falls on us to step up, to continue flooding the streets, to continue organizing, boycotting, to speak out on all platforms, to try to send a clear message that we will not stand for what is happening right now.
According to Al Jazeera, Greta, They're saying, according to flight radar, which tracks aircraft movements, an Israel-made Hellenic Coast Guard drone, IAI Heron UAV, hovered over the Madeleine ship. The drone's deployment was confirmed by the Greek Ministry of Defense. We're speaking to you from the United States, where the South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham wrote on X, "Hope Greta and her friends can swim." Your response?
We can swim very well. It says a lot about their priorities that in the face of genocide and systematic starvation of 2 million people, lawmakers, elected officials whose responsibility it should be to serve the people and to protect the people, that they, rather than ending their complicity in genocide and the mass slaughtering of civilians, are focusing on mocking people who are at least trying to do their bits. I think that says everything we need to know about their priorities.
And finally, your message to Palestinians who perhaps have read about or heard about your voyage or waiting your arrival. What is your message to them?
My message to them would be that we stand behind you in every step of the way. We are standing in solidarity with you. We see you. And I am also my deepest apologies on behalf of the outside world, especially the Western world, that we continue to betray you and that more people are not stepping up. But I promise that at least we here will try our very best to stand up for you as well. And to support you in your struggle.
Greta, we wish you all safety. Greta Thunberg, internationally renowned Swedish climate activist who inspired the global youth climate strike. She's won the Right Livelihood Award, has also been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, was speaking to us aboard the Gaza Freedom Flotilla's vessel Madeleine, which is on a voyage from Sicily to Gaza, carrying life-saving aid in an attempt to break Israel's siege of the Gaza Strip. It's day 3 of what they expect to be a 7-day trip. We'll continue to follow it. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.
My name is Rochelle Morridge. I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon based here in the UK. I've been to Gaza twice during this recent war. First time was 4 months into the war, where I worked in European Gaza Hospital, and the second time was in December 24, where I worked in Nasser Hospital. The reality on the ground is worse than anything I've ever seen in my life. It's worse than what the media show. It's worse than any testimony you've heard. It's just beyond imagination. Most of the patients I cared for are children. Children with multiple amputations, children with severe burns, children with injuries that no one should endure. I mean, the influx of patients I've seen in Gaza are astronomical. If this happens in any major UK hospital, the hospital will be shut down in 2 days. I don't know how hospitals are still functioning in Gaza for the past 19 months with little supply, no equipment, being partially or fully closed by bombing or evacuations.
لعل البعض يقول هل آن الأوان للمقاومة الفلسطينية مثلا أن ترفع الراية البيضاء تعلن الهزيمة وقفا لدماء الفلسطينيين في قطاع غزة، وقفا للمعاناة، وقفا لإعطاء ذرائع للاحتلال الإسرائيلي للمضي قدما في إنهاء الفلسطينيين في قطاع غزة؟ لأن البعض يقول ذلك للحقيقة. لا أقول فقط السلطة الفلسطينية بشكل أو بآخر، لكن هناك أصوات تعلو يوما بعد يوم في هذا السياق وتحمل على الأقل المسؤولية، لا أقول لحماس لكن على الأقل تقول لها ارفعي الراية البيضاء، أنت فعلتي ما عليك وكفى حتى هذه اللحظة.
رأيي فشر اللي بيقول هذا الكلام، وفشروا من يدعون إليه، ليس لأنه الشعب الفلسطيني وقواه مهما كانت قدراتها لن تستسلم ولن ترفع الراية البيضاء، ونحن شعب يناضل من أجل حريته صار له 77 سنة بل 100 سنة في الواقع، ولم يرفع يوما الراية البيضاء لأحد ولن يقبل أن يرفع الراية البيضاء. ولكن بدي أساير المنطق الذي يطرح هذا التساؤل الخبيث، وأقول لو فرضنا أن حركة المقاومة رفعت راية استسلام واستسلمت لإسرائيل، ما الذي سيحدث؟ ستجتاح إسرائيل كل قطاع غزة في خلال ساعات، وستقوم بتنفيذ تهجير شامل لكل سكان قطاع غزة خلال أيام، وتحشر الناس في جنوب قطاع غزة في معسكر الاعتقال الكبير في رفح، ثم سترحل أهل غزة بالكامل إلى خارج قطاع غزة. هذا ما سيحدث. هذا لن ينقذ غزة، هذا سيطيع بغزة، سيودي بغزة إلى التهلكة، سيودي بالشعب الفلسطيني إلى الهلاك، وسيقتل روح الأمل لدى الشعب الفلسطيني. وفي نفس الوقت ستجتاح المستوطنون الإسرائيليون كل الضفة الغربية دون استثناء. طيب اللي بيطالبوا المقاومة بالاستسلام يورجونا شو بيعملوا هم للاستعمار الاستيطاني الذي ينتشر الآن في الضفة الغربية.
And it was hushed. And some guys took flamethrowers and ran after people and incinerated them. It was horrifying. It's forbidden to tell. I'm not going to talk about it because it could cause a huge scandal.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show, everyone. Keaton and Russ here with Dr. Gabor Mate filling in for Jimmy this week. Russell, go ahead.
You mentioned how many Jews, even outside of Israel and inside of Israel, are just completely brainwashed into this fanatical Zionism. At the time that I was growing up, there was really no questioning it. By that time, we weren't even really aware that there had even been a debate about this. We just grew up in a world where Zionism and Judaism were inextricably linked. There was no separation between the two. Why? Holocaust. Any questioning of that? We went back to the Holocaust, and the idea that maybe the IDF and the Israelis might sometimes go too far was always a question of being pushed to it. The idea that Israel had been born in oppression and blood was something that was just not even discussed. I mean, it would not be anywhere in the media. Now, I've debated many Jewish Zionist Americans. The only thing I've ever shown anybody that made an impression was the film Tantora.
Yeah.
I think because it is such a counter narrative. Because this is not, you're not talking about now. You're not talking about 20 years ago. You're talking about the very inception of Israel. So I'm going to play a little bit of this, and I want to get your comments. People went to Tantora. It was awful. Tantora was a rich village, beautiful houses. They lived there like Europeans, you know? And the women were beautifully dressed. This village was really... One guy raped there a 16-year-old girl or something of the sort. You understand? But this is very ugly. There was one guy, he passed away. He was a savage. He just took them and murdered them in the enclosures. They were in enclosures, you know, surrounded by barbed wire. All the men were rounded up. They were all sitting on the ground. And someone comes and takes a machine gun and starts and then reloaded the cartridge. What do you think? But we weren't like that. He was exceptional, that guy, and what he did. And it was hushed. And some guys took flamethrowers and ran after people and incinerated them. It was horrifying. It's forbidden to tell. I'm not going to talk about it because it could cause a huge scandal. I don't want to talk about it. That's it. But it happened. What can you do? It happened. Now, watching this film, and you can see he's laughing as he talks about this. He's acknowledging this was horrible, but he's laughing about it. It seems like for his generation of Israelis, there's just an agreement of complicity, and to accept that complicity. One of the most remarkable things in that film was very subtle to me. People who live in the village now, they were talking about putting up a monument to the Arabs that had been killed in Tantora. And one of them says, well, they have those monuments in Berlin if you go there. So, which just is openly acknowledging, yes, we did to these people what was done to us. At the same time, subsequent generations, even Israelis I've talked to, they don't know this. They don't really know about this history. But when I did show this to an American Zionist, she came back crying and she said, wow, they did what was done to them, huh? And I was like, yeah. And nobody ever told us about that. That is erased from the narrative. It's kind of a truism of psychology that the abused become abusers. Is Israel an entire society built on that principle?
Well, number of points, Russ. First of all, as you duly noted, notice the disconnect between what he's saying and his demeanor. If you shut off the sound, or if there wasn't subtitles, you'd think he was telling some jolly story.
Right, yeah.
So even in acknowledging the truth, he's emotionally disconnected from it. Completely disconnected.
Right.
And he's one of the few even willing to acknowledge what happened.
Right.
Now, what he says, of course, has been studied and documented by multiple Israeli historians. The rapes, the mass killings, the cruelty, the expulsions, and so on. But there's no emotional connection to it. And that itself is a defense against reality, which then allows the present to continue the way it is. Number one. Number two, the debate on Zionism didn't begin in 1948. It began at the very arising of the Zionist idea. Most Jews were never interested in Zionism. At a time in the 1910s when maybe 1905 to 1915, where maybe 30,000 Jews from Eastern Europe went to Palestine, 2 million came to the United States. They were just not interested. And so this whole idea of being so connected to this country, we've always wanted to go back, is absolute historical nonsense. And there were Zionist leaders like Jabotinsky, the founder of the revisionist Zionism that became the Likud. He said very openly, and Ben-Gurion, the labor Zionist leader who became the first prime minister, they both said very openly that we call the Arabs terrorists, but actually they're just people defending their own homeland. People do the same thing. So they knew what they were doing. And they openly acknowledged it. The difference between the Ben-Gurion and the Jabotinsky is that, at least privately, they told the truth. Public consumption, oh, it's, we're the victims. But the debate around Zionism is not new. And what was unique is your experience. There was a generation or two when you couldn't debate it. That shifted now under the impact of the horrors of Gaza. That edifice has been shattered. And a lot of young Jews, and not just young Jews, are openly questioning, and never mind questioning, opposing it. I'm not sure what else there was in your question. If there's something I haven't answered, just repeat it, would you?
No, you answered it. I mean, I think when I was growing up, the whole assumption was that the founding of Israel was a demonstration of the arc of the universe bending towards justice. These people had been horribly abused, and look, they returned to their historic homeland, so-called, and the idea that the Arabs were proxies for the Nazis was unquestioned, and that continues in the Israeli narrative and in the Zionist narrative, the dehumanization.
It wasn't unquestioned by all of them. It was actually questioned by some, but those voices were marginalized.
Right, then it was, yeah.
But the other thing I would say is to American Zionists, if you really believe that Israel is the Jewish homeland, and historically we've always longed to return, well, get on the bloody airplane and go there. and move there. Leave your apartments in New York, give up your Hollywood mansions, give up your businesses, go and relocate. You know, if you really believe that, what's stopping you? It's such hypocrisy. You know, it's like they want to keep this Middle Eastern territory as an insurance policy.
Right.
And they don't care who they have to displace, kill, dispossess, oppress, in order to maintain their insurance policy. I mean, if you really believe in the Zionist idea, and if you call yourself a Zionist, what are you doing here? Nothing's stopping you. If you say you've been longing to go back there for 2,000 years, that's great. All you have to do is buy a ticket. And
why do you think so many don't? I mean, why do you think not as many do?
And within 2 days, you'll be a citizen, and on the third day, you can move to the West Bank and get 6 times as much water as the average Palestinian is allowed. And you'll be allowed to dig wells and have a swimming pool in your settlement, while the Palestinians can't even dig wells in their own land. And you can torment them, you can beat them up, and you can shoot them, and nobody's going to punish you for it. So do it, if you're a Zionist. And if you're not a Zionist, and if you're not willing to do that, you're not a Zionist. You're just somebody who wants an insurance policy.
Well, and as an insurance policy, I must say, I have seen, and we predicted this as soon as October 7th happened. I've never seen real anti-Semitism become so mainstreamed and normalized as it has since October 7th, because it is certainly not to the benefit of the Jewish people to have Zionists insisting that Judaism and Zionism are one as people watch the live streaming of a genocide. Yeah. Do you worry that this is going to lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy on the part of the Zionists, where there's a huge anti-Semitic pogrom really in the West?
No, I'm not. I actually am not worried about it. It's true that there's no better way to foster anti-Jewish sentiment than to identify what Israel is doing with Jewishness itself. I mean, you couldn't think of you couldn't devise a better method to convince people to dislike Jews.
Yes.
But I think most people are capable of making that distinction that the Zionists don't make, is that Jewishness is not the same as Zionism. All the more so since a lot of Jews are speaking out against it now. Mm-hmm. And so this argument that we're fostering anti-Semitism by criticizing Israel, it's the opposite. You blind fool. We're actually protecting you by disengaging the idea of Jewishness from Zionism and Israeli policy. Number one. Number two, anti-Semitism, genuine anti-Semitism, is far deeper than just certain feelings or certain opinions. It's actually a visceral disease, and it has nothing to do with the Jew. So that there's a story, if I can indulge in the storytelling, of a Roman emperor, I don't know, 1st, 2nd century Common Era, who was riding on his chariot through Rome, and he sees a Jew who greets him, and the emperor says, "Punish him. How dare a mere Jew address the emperor of all Rome?" A few minutes later, another Jew who's heard about this sees the emperor and just ignores him. And the emperor says, "Punish him. How dare a mere Jew ignore the emperor of all Rome?" And his attendants say to him, "But Imperial Majesty, on the one hand, you punish the one for greeting you, the other for not greeting." He says, "You don't get it. I don't care what they do. I just hate them for who they are." And the visceral anti-Semitism that I experienced in Hungary myself growing up, it had nothing to do with what I did or any Jew did. It had to do with the diseased imagination of the anti-Semite. And that's not the same as, certainly is not the same as anti-Zionism, and it's certainly not the same even as occasional anti-Jewish sentiment. And when we talk about rising anti-Semitism, really, what's the proof for it? If we identify Israel with Jewishness, then of course anybody who criticizes it is by definition an anti-Semite. But does the average Jewish person in the United States afraid to walk down a block because they're Jewish? Are they going to lose their jobs because they're Jewish? Are their children not going to be able to allow certain schools, which used to be the case in the States until a few decades ago? But is that the case now? Is their livelihood going to be threatened because they're Jewish? Are they going to be afraid to worship their religion because they're Jewish? No, that's largely not the case. And is it true that racism in general is burgeoning in a society? Yes. And Jews certainly are one target of it. But in Canada, where I live, would I rather be an Indigenous Canadian walking down the street or a Jew walking down the street? Which is the most likely to get me beat up by the police?
Right.
In certain areas of town. In the United States, which is more likely to get killed living in my own neighborhood? A Jewish person or a black person? Who's more likely to be threatened? A colored person or a Caucasian person? So, on a practical level, I just don't see it. Now, are there not incidents? Yes, there are. There was that terrible massacre in that synagogue some years ago. There was also a terrible massacre at a black church.
Right.
There was the killing of these two people in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. There was also the knifing death of a 6-year-old Palestinian child. I'm not saying that the two balance or somehow one explains or justifies the other. Nothing justifies any of it. But let's not create this belief that somehow it's exclusive or especially virulent towards Jews. That's just not true.
Come see us live. Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool, Birmingham. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.
Now they attacked the southern suburb of Beirut. They sent a warning. There was a confirmation that there was a warning sent. But these were civilian buildings at the end of the day. So from an Israeli perspective, it's not in the areas that they are looking to officially target. They're asking for the Lebanese to remove any arms that are south to the Litani River. Beirut is north of the Litani River, and that hasn't been included in any of the drafts or agreements or even ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon as mediated by the French and the Americans. But Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to drag more and more people or countries into the war so that he can potentially take away the attention from him. Now, how will this work for Netanyahu if he, for example, manages to get a response? Well, number one, there is no guarantee that Benjamin Netanyahu would get a response. But there are certain things happening, especially between Iran and the United States, that show you that something might go wrong between the United States and Iran, especially with the talks not really going as planned. And as a matter of fact, there were multiple reports that there's this technology being passed to the region from the Americans to the Middle East. Fuses for rockets that Ukraine used to shoot down Russian drones have been transferred to US Air Force units in the Middle East. The decision to divert the fuses Ukraine prepares for more drone missile attacks from Russia is a blow to Ukraine. Is the escalation imminent? This is one report coming from Israel here. Now, of course, this could be a dual move coming from Donald Trump. The recent attack that was described the biggest attack against Russia that came from Ukraine with drones attacking some of its strategic bombers. It did not come after a consultation or an approval from the United States, and that could be a message coming from Donald Trump. However, Donald Trump, if he knows that an Israeli attack against Iran is imminent, he will have to do something to try and also protect himself, because the Iranian ultimatum that was given to Donald Trump, they told him that we will attack any base of the United States, even if no attack is carried out from that country against us. So if Saudi Arabia, for example, the bases in Saudi Arabia or Qatar or any other location, they do not have any attacks being carried out against them from those areas, Iran will still attack them. Iran told them, we're brothers and we have a brotherly relationship. However, if there is an attack against us, these bases will be under attack. So Donald Trump could potentially be preparing the ground for an escalation that he will be dragged into, despite the fact that he isn't necessarily fully convinced with the idea. As a matter of fact, he spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu multiple times, and he told him that we would prefer for there to be a solution rather than an escalation. Now, from the talks perspective between Iran and the United States, well, they said that they're not continuing now. They're not setting a sixth round of talks so far. Why? Because they are at a situation where the United States is asking Iran to stop enriching uranium. From an Iranian perspective, that is a red line. As a matter of fact, there were multiple statements coming from the Iranian supreme leader and the Iranian foreign minister saying that it's a red line. In this report here, Khamenei slams U.S. proposal, vows to keep enriching uranium. The Iranian foreign minister said, no uranium means no deal. That's confirming that the United States under Trump is still insisting on Iran not enriching uranium, which is, by the way, an Israeli demand. Again, another proof that, well, the lobby is still strong in influencing Benjamin Netanyahu. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the United States will be attacking, especially with the tensions that have been happening between Israel and Donald Trump, especially the Benjamin Netanyahu government. And as a proof that, well, things can change and that, well, Donald Trump can change his mind, Donald Trump recently had a massive row with Elon Musk to a level where he's threatening to cut his government contracts. Now, Musk was responsible for supporting Donald Trump with approximately $250 million US, which is approximately the same amount that the Zionist lobby supported Trump with. Despite that, things started to escalate. Tensions between him and Donald Trump started to escalate heavily. Elon Musk outright started to criticize some of Trump's moves in relation to taxes. Now Trump came up on Truth Social, and he said that, well, one of the ways that we can save a lot of money is to cut the government support for companies that belong to Elon Musk. That will save us. That will save us a lot of headache. As a matter of fact, this was the actual post that Donald Trump had on Truth Social. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon Musk's governmental subsidies and contracts. He wrote on his own network. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. This just gets better and better. Musk replied to him, and then he also criticized him even more. This shows you that Donald Trump, although he might have had the support of Elon Musk and hundreds of millions from Elon Musk, look at how things flipped internally. You're talking about American tensions here. Well, something can also happen between him and the Netanyahu government, especially with the fact that he made all of these moves recently, taking people off who are pro-Israelis, of course, not visiting Israel, senior figures canceling their trips to Israel. However, despite all of that, the Netanyahu